talk's called Bug Bounty Programs. It's about what I call crowdsourcing security. It's here. So what we're going to talk about today is the history of bug bounty programs, why and how to make a program, when I say our, I mean Mozilla's bug bounty process, common bounty concerns, interesting, well, this is a little bit out of order, but I'm going to go through our bounty results to give you an idea of how successful our bounty program has been. And if we have enough time, I have a couple of interesting bugs that people have found that I wanted to share. Okay. Oops, that's not what happened. So one of the questions is, why am I here giving a presentation on bounty programs? And there's two really big things about what I want to project, what I want to give. And I kind of feel that there are two kinds of people. There are people who are interested in participating in a bug bounty program, who don't know enough about it, but who maybe don't take advantage from finding bugs and submitting to us. And there's companies who maybe could use a bug bounty program in their own process. So I'm kind of trying to address both scenarios. So when you're thinking of questions, if you have a question on either one, feel free to ask in any of that direction. So I'm going to introduce you to the concept of the bug bounty programs. Anyone already did this? I can't believe I just did that. Okay. But why did we make a bug bounty program? Netscape before Mozilla had a bug bounty program for years, all the way from the mid-90s. And user data safety is our #1 job as a security team. So whatever we can do to provide additional security is what we want to do. At the same time, we at Mozilla consider ourselves a community product, a project really. So we try to include the security community and other people who want to get involved in what is the security of Firefox. I say that a lot. People come to me and they're like, hey, there's this bug in Firefox, that sucks. And I agree, but here's some source code, or here's a link. If you want to help work with us on it, that would be awesome. We like to work directly with the researchers rather than try to find these things out in the wild. We give the researchers an opportunity to come straight to us. The other reason we do this is consistent security at scale is hard. So when I started Mozilla, there were 3 people in the security team, 3 or 4 people. And we didn't have Firefox OS at that point. We didn't have the Open Web App initiatives. We didn't have Marketplace. We had some of the big websites you're familiar with, addons.mozilla.org, support, some developer, where all our information is. Now we've got, I think, 15 or 16 people in our security team, but we've also got, I think, 800 people in the company now, somewhere between 700 and 800 people in the company. So while our security team has grown, it has not grown nearly as large, as fast as Mozilla as a company has grown. And there's really, as many people will know, there's no way you can grow your security team as fast as your products are being developed. Firefox OS has been a huge burden on us to be able to provide security assistance with that. So trying to come up with things that allow us to work at scale are really important for us, whether it's automation or, in this case, our bug bounty program. We focus our efforts there. Obviously, people are doing it now without notifying us. People are finding bugs and they're doing bad things with them, or they're just not telling people, or they're kind of going public right away, or not giving us the opportunity to fix them. And I put in here that the gray market is a big deal, and we'll talk a little bit more of that in a minute. Go away. Why are you there? Okay, so let's talk a little about the history of bug bounty programs. As you can see, Netscape started a bug bounty program in 1995, and then followed by iDefense, who was basically buying bugs from people and then kind of selling them to their companies before eventually giving them to the vendors. In 2004, we started the one for Firefox. ZDI came up after that, and ZDI is another clearing warehouse, you could say, clearinghouse of bugs. And then the competition Pwned Own, which I'm sure many people are familiar with. They're doing something very similar here. Hacking competitions, giving a competition to allow people to try to break into these things. And then in 2010, it kind of took off. And there was Google Chromium, Google Web. We developed an actual web-based one, as well as Google Barracuda. And then recently we've seen PayPal, and even more recently there's a company called BugCrowd who is, I believe, sponsoring this, who is effectively outsourcing bug bounty programs. And I can't say that I know much about it, but it seems like a very interesting thing. And it should help people who don't feel they have the organization to build a program to help them out. So these are the kinds of programs that you see. We have open to all. Report directly to software maker. They provide you some money. Everything is great. Netscape, Firefox, Chromium, Barracuda, all those fall into that. There's the clearinghouse. These are the people who will buy the vulnerability from somebody. And in some cases, like ZDI, their goal is to develop some kind of signature around that vulnerability and then turn around and give it to the vendor. As you can see, it's not quite vendor straight to the vendor. There's a little lag in there. And then the team competition, Pwn to Own, and then the Deutsche Post e-brief, and also this one. What I don't have listed here, we'll talk a little bit, is also the gray and black market. Client programs, the money ranges anywhere. Ours is $3,000. Using 3133.7 is pretty common because it's the leet speak. Qmail is a funny one. Basically, the guy who wrote Qmail posted on Krypton saying, if anybody can find a security bug, I'll pay him $1,000. So I included that. It's a little more informal. Samsung TV was new for me. I had no idea. I thought that was kind of awesome. Find a vulnerability in the TV and get $1,000. Hexrays has had theirs for a little while. Then there's program bounties for the web. In our case, for the web, we have a variance in how much money that a person can make. It can be as low as $500 if it's a vulnerability we feel is not quite as severe, but still worth paying out to, all the way up to $3,000. Google does the same thing, $500, they do, once again, the lead speak. And Facebook, they pay around $500 up to $5,000, depending on their vulnerability. And I don't know how many people saw recently, they've been posting a couple of interesting blog posts about finding vulnerabilities in their stuff. I highly recommend looking at it if you get a chance. Okay, so I found a vulnerability. What are the options that I have with this? I can either hold on to it, I can and use it for myself, and I've seen lots of vulnerabilities before I was at Mozilla. This is how it worked. We can release it to the web for full disclosure, basically make a name for ourselves, get a reputation. Sometimes we feel like it'll help our resume. We can sell it to the gray market. Talk about what the gray market is. Okay, sell it to the gray market or send it to the vendor. So I'll take a brief moment to talk about what I find the differences, and I might actually have this in here. Sorry, no. The differences between the vendor and even the clearinghouse, the gray market for vulnerabilities, and the black market. And this is kind of my distinction, and other people might disagree with this, but the big difference between the sending to the vendors and selling to somebody like a gray market or black market is that the gray or black market have no intention of returning that vulnerability to the vendor. So their plan is to have it used in some way. The gray market has a tendency to be selling to companies or to government entities. The black market obviously is much more towards illegal activities, Carters, various other kinds of illegal activities. So the benefit of the gray market is they pay out a lot more. Negative impact to rep, which I thought was really interesting. I was having a conversation with a friend, and we were talking about how he was not able to hire anybody that had sold vulnerabilities on the gray market. Like, that basically changes your reputation and makes it difficult to hire you. I had no idea that was true. It makes sense. But so you have to think about that when you're thinking about where am I pushing these bugs to. Or send to vendor. Make some money. They get fixed, and you get to be able to point at bugs and vulnerabilities and say, those are mine. Any questions so far? Awesome.
Question?
Yeah.
So why did you say you get more money if you send it to the gray market? Do you compare it with the vendors or with the black market?
To the vendors. The gray market and black market are more money. And there's a reason for that, because their expectations are higher. I should be getting into that. Okay, oh yeah, here we go. So like I said, negative impact on reputation. Another thing that's really key, that's different about what the expectation of somebody like the gray market and what a bug bounty program that's based on a vendor is the sophistication of the weaponization. So for instance, when I get a vulnerability and our committee is assessing this vulnerability, we're not looking for an exploit. We're not even looking for a proof of concept. If we can see a vulnerability and we can see how it's potentially, even potentially exploitable, that's considered a valid bug. When you work with something like a gray market or a black market, they want weaponized vulns. They want to see something they can drop into a kit and launch. So, as most people know, finding a vuln is fairly easy. Weaponizing a vuln is a whole nother story entirely. This can be very challenging. And then of course, there's a negative impact on the rest of us. We all want our browser to be more secure. We want to be able to feel safe browsing the internet. And the more people hide vulnerabilities and don't share them. One thing that one of the various places that I've been to, various companies, Microsoft, where I've been to where vulnerabilities have been found internally or close by, I try to tell them, just because we found a vulnerability here doesn't mean other people haven't found it as well. So just trying to think that just because, even if it's the gray market, you feel like the gray market is the only person who has this vulnerability. It's not true. There are other hackers out there that have it. So the sooner that the vendor can get this, the sooner the vendor can patch it, the better it is for everybody. So the benefits for us have been to engage the community, and it has worked. We get a lot of great community engagement. Produce many high-value bugs, and I'll walk through a couple of them. It's fascinating, some of the bugs we found. We found that different classes of I wouldn't say different classes of vulnerabilities, but certainly new interesting ways of finding bugs have created spikes in the amount of traffic we get, which has been really helpful. When you get involved in the bounty program, you're not purchasing silence. We don't tell anybody that they can't release the bug. We don't tell them at all what they can do with it. We're buying the report. That's it. Security at a huge scope. Obviously, once again, it's like making everybody our security testers, which is kind of nice. And as I said, identifies clever attacks and edge cases. You get enough people, you get some really interesting, clever people that have some interesting time to work on stuff, and they come up with some very interesting attacks. Okay, so when we first started the bug bounty program, there were certain concerns that came up about certain set of concerns, problems people had, things that people were worried about happening by just having the bug bounty program. Here was a list of them. Encourage attackers. Too expensive. Veil of cover for attackers. Bounty program duplicates internet internal security work and can't compete with the black market. So let's go through those. Bounty of encouraging attackers. I don't think attackers actually need much encouragement. They're going to attack you whether you make a target or not. And this helps kind of, when you create a focus for somebody to attack, it kind of pulls them away from your main thing. So in the website, for instance, we have staging versions of Bugzilla set up so that people can attack that easily. People attack Bugzilla as well, but we find a lot of focus on our staging versions. Without a bounty program, without this program, people are afraid to report, which sounds kind of silly, but I've seen several reports of people who have tried to report their vulnerabilities and getting arrested or getting in trouble for just finding these security flaws. Having these bug bounty programs legitimizes people's ability to test and help you out. And it enables participants that will help you. I think there's a lot of people who maybe are only kind of on the fence or doing interesting work, And it incentivizes them. I'd like to be involved in security as well, and I can make a little money on the side. Too expensive. Well, we've found that there's a high value in what we've received, because it's worked for us. If you compare it to equivalent third-party testing, hiring a third party to come and do evaluations, you have to do that kind of evaluation. How much would you be paying somebody to come and do a pen test of your site? How much would you be paying for somebody to fuzz or do other things to your product? It provides continual testing, which is really nice. Once again, it goes back to the third party. If I hire a third party to come in and fuzz Firefox for me, we tell them for this version here, we need to get this fuzzed. That contract ends, and now I have nobody fuzzing Firefox anymore. This is a continual thing. People are always trying to find flaws in our product. We have used individual bugs to identify root cause flaws. It's definitely worked out for us that we've found new interesting attack vectors through the bounty program. And then you have to ask yourself, what percentage of your profit is spent on security? It's really easy to say it's expensive, but you look at its effectiveness, and you look at the other ways that money is being spent by the corporation and decide its effectiveness. And security has been really important for the past, 10 years or so, 15 years, and it's becoming more important all the time. Bounty veil of cover for attackers. So our goal is not to find attackers. We don't want to find bad people. We want to find flaws in the product. So we don't really care about the attackers. So coming up with a plan, what can we do to help alleviate as far as the website goes? Because that's really the biggest concern, right? When you're setting up a bug bounty program, especially a web one, you have actual user data places. And you don't want user data to get out there. And there's that fear that by allowing a bug bounty program to happen, that they could come in and take your data. For instance, Bugzilla does handle all of our security vulnerabilities. So if somebody was attempting to use the bug bounty program and found a flaw in Bugzilla that allowed them to access secret or hidden bugs, then in theory that data is out there. So providing people a target to attack with. Full controls, make sure your production is locked down as humanly possible, and then set up a staging server. We actually do respond to attackers on our public sites. If somebody does attack us, or especially DOS, or we see a lot of scanners being used across our stuff, we block them. We don't block scanners being used against our staging site, but definitely against our production site. Duplicates internal security work. You don't know what you don't know. And that's an easy one. There's, like I said, there's 14 people in our security team. We have, say, 4 or 5 people that actively work on web vulnerability assessments. Say 4 or 5 people working on fuzzing of Firefox. And then maybe 2 of us working on fuzzing of Firefox OS. That's not a lot of people. And sure, we're all trying to find vulnerabilities, but obviously we can't keep up with what's out there in the world. It helps identify process breakdowns. Obviously, if there's bugs being found, especially architectural logic flaws, helps us identify where a flaw in the process is. Identifies areas for training in SDLC. When you look at the report, the data that we see, we're seeing tons of cross-site scripting. When you start seeing all this cross-site scripting, you start saying, okay, we need to come up with a couple of different solutions, whether as an organization, so you help able to adapt. Do I do training? Do I create a library for a framework that blocks cross-site scripting more effectively? And really, it's just another tactic to protect our users and data. Bounty concerns can't compete with the black market. So a bounty program and a black market or gray market target different people. Some people want to just make lots of money, they want to be bad, they want to be black hats. Many people don't actually want to hassle with questionably ethical or legal issues. So one thing that I feel about black markets is that I'm not trying to compete money for money with the black market. So I'm not gonna. So if the black market will take a vuln, they'll buy it for $20,000. That doesn't concern me. What concerns me is getting more people involved in our bug bounty program, because the more people that get involved, the more likely they're going to find the same bugs that this person who's selling it to the black market is going to find. So the more eyes I have, the more vulnerabilities I have, the less value the black market is going to have for people, and it's going to be a snowball effect if we do this right. So that's why I really push away from even thinking about the black market, because it's just going to exist, it's going to happen. Our goal is to try to minimize it as much as possible. Okay. So, has anybody here ever submitted something to a bug bounty process? No? Okay. So then it's, no idea it's black box. Many people do it many different ways. The way we do it is somebody reports a vulnerability. They either email us at security@mozilla.org, or they create a bug in bugzilla.mozilla.org and then mail security. One of my projects is to actually try to make a more interesting form for people to fill out to make it easier to track this. But right now, it's this kind of old school way. If the person submitted a bug through email but did not create a bug, then we go ahead and create a bug for them. We tell them that we appreciate what they've sent, and if they want to participate in the fixing of the bug, that they can either create a Bugzilla account or let us know their Bugzilla account, and we actually add them to that bug. So they're going to have an insight into the process of how that actually gets fixed. We have a security bounty flag we set that says this is available for bounty. It's secure, and it's only readable by the security group and the reporter. And then all communications happen in that bug. That's how we try to communicate. Some people don't want to create bugs, so we do communicate over email with them, but it's not the most efficient way to do it. In the bug, obviously, the developers come, they talk about letting the developer know where they're seeing the bug, so the developer has a better idea of how to fix it. And then the Bug Bounty Committee meets and discusses all the bugs that are nominated for the bounty. So the Bug Bounty Committee, in our case, is made up of, at the most, about 5 people. Those people are me, another engineer, our manager, and I guess it's 4. And then the guy who's responsible for paying the checks. Now, as long as there's 3 of us, we'll go ahead with this meeting anyway. Oh yeah, and then there's a program manager. And each bug is evaluated for its risk. So especially when we're talking about web vulnerabilities, obviously the site that it's been found in is a big part of the risk that vulnerability is. So for instance, in developer.net, like say there's a cross-site scripting attack in developer.mozilla.org where you can build example code. There's only so much we could do with that part. The risk is only so much. So it may not necessarily warrant a bounty, especially if it's like, say, a self cross-site scripting. Versus, say something was found in a test site somewhere, but it allowed local file inclusion. Not necessarily the riskiest site, but the fact that you have like local file inclusion means that somebody can actually own the box at that point, and at that point it becomes a much bigger deal. Bugs must be at least high risk to be eligible for bounty. And the important thing for us, all recent builds for Firefox are eligible. If you find a vulnerability in our nightly build, then it's available. Aurora, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's not like nobody should have to hold on to a vulnerability before to make sure it comes up in a version that's closer to release. So as far as the web bounty process, high risk or above, sometimes we take a moderate if it's a really interesting, clever vulnerability. For instance, if it's a site that doesn't really matter that much, but it's a really fun vulnerability, we'll pay out for things like that. But we have specific sites that we spell out, and no duplicates. This actually applies to both of them. We don't pay we don't pay somebody for a bug we already got from somebody else. So we search through Bugzilla, make sure we haven't seen this vulnerability. We have I have a pretty good idea of what vulnerabilities I've seen, and I actually document each one as it comes in, so I can track statistics and such. So I, for the most part, know what I've seen, what we've seen. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the results. So this is a graph, obviously, and it's hard to read, but this starts in August of 2010 and ends up in January of 2003. And what we see here, this green line is the amount of accepted vulnerabilities. This red line is the amount of submitted vulnerabilities. And you can see, like this spike right here happened because a person who we ended up hiring because he submitted so many bugs, found a really interesting new way to fuzz JavaScript, the JavaScript language itself. So that happened there, and then as you can see right here, this has gotten a little crazy. And the reason why we have so many vulnerabilities here is because I think it was Google released a new tool called ASAN. ASAN stands for address sanitizer, and it basically you build it into your binary, and it does memory things that make fuzzers work more effectively. And yeah, and it's started to drop off a little bit. It was crazy here, and I will say that most of this, I'd say 3/4 was one person. He got a lot of money. So this, one thing I wanted to kind of express is if anybody was interested, was where people were finding their vulnerabilities in Firefox. And the biggest part is core. So core is the Gecko engine, it's JavaScript, it's basically this part, which is Firefox, wraps around that. And Firefox is mainly the UI, the toolkit, things like that. NSS is the security stack. But obviously in the core, as we'll see as I've got a breakdown here, is where the vast majority of our vulnerabilities are. Yeah. So the JavaScript engine right here is the biggest place for our security vulnerabilities. It's obviously JavaScript engine is a very complicated piece of code, and it's kind of a lot of fun to fuzz. And it also has, as you can see, a pretty high success rate. There's not a lot of false positives there, as opposed to, we'll say, graphics engine has a pretty low success rate. And the DOM is a big one. People have been trying to fuzz on the DOM for a while, and we have our own kind of internally built fuzzers for that. But this is a place right here where I think that there's more work that can be done in the community to fuzz this particular component, especially just trying to find an effective way to fuzz the DOM. Layout is another good one right here. Yeah. So this is just a little graph showing how many original bugs and how many duplicates we get. Obviously in the Firefox, we get a tremendous amount of original bugs. We actually don't get many duplicates at all, which is very cool. When we look at the web bounty data, it's a little different. Okay. So this is how it looked like for the web bounty submission. Obviously, this is an easy one to realize. This is when we started. As soon as we started, we got slammed with vulnerabilities. And it kind of stayed high for a little bit and tapered off. These are accepted vulnerabilities. And as you can see, we're pretty consistent. Every month, we're paying out around 4 or 5 bugs, or paying out 4 or 5 bounties for vulnerabilities found on the website, or the various websites. As far as bugs by category, as you can see, most of them are cross-site scripting, which are pretty low-hanging fruit, but we still have them out there. Cross-site requests, really the biggest two single things are cross-site request forgery and cross-site scripting, which I find very interesting because we use frameworks that those are built into, but we still find these kind of things out there.
Can you actually read out the names?
Sure. Cross-site scripting attack is this one. Other is this one, and that's various things, local file inclusion, things like that. CSRF right here. Input validation right here. SQL injection right there. What's that one?
So that's you're reading or out of memory?
What's that?
You're reading it, or it's just out of memory you're telling it?
No, I know these ones, yeah. This is authentication right here, vulnerabilities. And this is SSL vulnerabilities right here, which come in every once in a while. In fact, I just paid out on one a couple weeks ago. Somebody figured out that they could use crime on one of our servers. Or Beast, one or the other. I can't keep track of them. Yeah, it's crime, right? 'Cause, yeah. Okay, well now, as you can see here, on the other hand, the duplicate versus new bugs in the web program is much different. We get a lot more duplicates in web than we do the product. Let's see here. So I didn't do this for the product, obviously, because there's only one fee. There's $3,000. So every bug that you saw we paid out, and we paid $3,000. On the web, on the other hand, as you can see, the majority of them are still $3,000. And I'll say that cross-site scripting doesn't generally pay $3,000 unless we're afraid that they can capture some kind of authentication data. So, for instance, if it's at a site that we put in our LDAP auth, our corporation LDAP auth, then it might be $3,000. But SQL injection, local file inclusion, things like that, and we try to be as generous as we can. $2,000, $1,500, $1,000, $500. So that's the breakdown right there of how we pay them out, or how we have paid them out. Okay, so this slide here is one of the reasons why I'm here. If you look here, I've got a breakdown of all the, it's not actually just Bugmatic breakdown, it's everybody. Europe submits 50% of all, people in Europe submit 50% of all the Bugmatic vulnerabilities. United States 20, India 10%, and Russia 5%. Which is why I'm here to try to get this number to go way up, and this number to go way up. Because I'd love to see way more people participate. In the United States, funny enough, the Bay Area makes up most of everything that gets found. Europe, yeah. So who cares about Europe? But anyway, this was I wanted to point this out. 10% come from Europe or from India, and I think that could be a lot higher. Okay. So what next? For people who are interested in participating in the Bugmatic program, this is a site that one of my coworkers set up that basically shows all the changes that are happening in Firefox. So for instance, if you wanted to find a new interesting place to try to attack or to fuzz or to just do some kind of security testing on, that's the place to go, because that shows all new check-ins. But let's say you found a ton of bugs, or you want to participate more. Maybe you could try helping patch it. We definitely take patches from community members, especially security vulnerabilities, and we could definitely use help that way. You can't see this. Hopefully we'll put that somewhere. This link is to our mentorship program, where we new people or university people, not always, or anybody who wants to get more involved in security in Firefox, we help with a mentorship program. So for instance, one of the projects, there's two projects that I'm working on that I'm mentoring somebody on. One of those is, I want to add tainting to the JavaScript engine to make, so you can do DOM cross-site scripting faster or more effectively. Right now it's very hard because there's no way to follow data through the JS model. So we want to add the taint mechanism, which is kind of a huge deal, and I've got a university student working on that. Another thing is that Django, which is our Python library that we use for our web framework, has many things that I'd like to see improved security-wise. So I'm mentoring somebody on that project as well. So there's all kinds of projects. This is an example of different projects. And of course, you can find us on IRC at irc.mozilla.org and pound security. And I just wanted to mention, for anybody who's thinking about a Bugmatic program, because they heard this, they thought it kind of an awesome idea, because it is. The important thing to realize is it is not a substitute for your SDLC. It is an enhancement. It doesn't replace it. It's really, when you have a really efficient SDLC, this is more like the next step for that. And I'll just be really quick. I think the important thing here is that, and what I found from doing this, is that if you have developers that are not on board with this, you're going to end up paying people for bugs that don't get fixed. And that is a terrible place to be. So these things are the kind of things you need to do before you actually start this program. Define your scope, build the response team, set up your SLAs, define a clear reporting process. How are you going to get these bugs to these developers? Check your code, make sure your code is ready for something like this. We're right now in a fight to try to figure out how we're going to make Firefox OS have a bounty. And a lot of people feel we're not ready for that yet. And I'm pushing very hard for them to define what it needs to be ready so that we can make it happen. Stupid slide thing. Okay. So anyway, I'll just show one of the bugs. You can't really read that. So the one thing that was interesting about this bug right here is this was a buffer overflow found somewhere, and right here it says, somebody says, they asked a question about what version it was going to appear in. And they said, okay, I'm 12. I'm relatively new to the development process of large-scale projects. So the youngest person we've ever had submit a flaw and get paid for it was 12 years old. So, all right, that's it.
Did you specify a set of applications that are eligible for the bounty program?
We've made all of our applications eligible for the most part, other than Firefox OS.
So you have to go on board with developers in different teams.
You do, and right now, like we're having trouble with the website, right? The bugs not getting fixed fast enough. We're paying bounties on them, but not seeing them get fixed, and that's unfortunate. And people are starting to resubmit bugs that we've supposedly already gotten. Any other questions?
One question.
Yeah.
Have you taken any serious action against a bug hunter? In any
No.
situation?
No, never have. We hired one. I don't know if that's serious action or not.
And these bugs are only for security related, so you don't have
Yes.
the same for QA.
Right. You know, another thing that I think is really interesting is we actually even go so far as if somebody submits a bug, let's say that they submit a bug and they say, I made this layout and it's crashing Firefox. Could you please fix it? Developer looks at it and goes, oh, that's a security vulnerability. They get paid for that. That becomes an actual bounty paid. Anybody else?
One more thing.
Hmm?
Like Firefox gets new releases in every month. So like, are there any cases like one guy reported a vulnerability in Firefox 17, and you might have replied like, we are using a new version in Firefox 18 and it's not vulnerable, and so your bug is not eligible for that.
Yes, and so what we do as a rule for Firefox bounties is we don't pay out until there's a patch. So once a patch has been submitted, we then evaluate, because basically if it had already been fixed, we wouldn't want to pay out on that, or if it was a duplicate. And sometimes, especially when you're talking about the client, it's not clear, this bug kind of looks like this one, but doesn't exactly have the same wording, but it ends up being the same issue.
So are you guys waiting?
What's that?
Firefox says that revoke their support for Gecko.
For what?
Gecko. They reveal their support for Gecko. They're not supporting Gecko anymore because there is a lot of time gap in between the last Gecko upgrade and the
Do you mean Thunderbird? Because Gecko is the core of Firefox. It is definitely supported.
the 3.6 point something was the last one, right?
No, Gecko is still supported.
So there will be whatever the existing bugs they have in a Gecko, but they're not going to fix it, right?
Not that I know of. If you have specific ones, I'd be happy to look at them. I can tell you the status.
Embedded browsers, where they're using Mozilla as embedded browsers in client side. So that time.
You could also be thinking of SeaMonkey, but definitely Gecko is being supported. Because like I said, that's the core of Firefox. It's where the rendering engine is, it's where the JavaScript engine is, everything lives in Gecko.
So we are facing our company that they're facing the issue related to Gecko, and there's not proper supports available in market. So they're right now they're planning to shift from Gecko to Chromium.
Huh. Well, we could talk about that. I'm not sure which one you're talking about, but there might be some confusion. You got a question?
You are maintaining SSL or TLS code which you got from Netscape. I don't know whether you got it from Netscape or not.
The code for the Firefox code?
No, the SSL.
Oh, the SSL.
Yeah.
Pretty sure that's still kind of core still in what was original, what it was Netscape and is now Firefox.
Okay. Are you seeing any vulnerabilities over there apart from the one you mentioned?
Yeah, we found a couple vulnerabilities in there, not a lot. People haven't really hammered on that. Some of that crypto stuff I think scares people. Well now, so a couple of years.
No. How soon you give bounty? If I report you a bug, how soon you give the bounty?
Oh, how long to get the bounty?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So like I said,
After the patch.
after the patch, web vulnerabilities we do a little faster though, because they're easier for me to figure out whether they're real or not. Mostly because I'm more of a web guy than I'm a client guy. But those web ones get paid out generally. It can be anywhere a couple weeks, month and a half. It kind of depends on how things are flowing. Because I'll tell you, we get flooded, right? So we'll come on a Monday to the meeting, and there'll be 30 new bugs. And we've still got 20 or 30 from the last week. So we'll go through as fast as we can, but sometimes we rat hole down them, and then we've done like 10 bugs. And we're like, all right, done with this meeting. So it sometimes takes us a while to get through them all. We'll make another meeting such as that, but so we do the best we can.
Okay, so around month or
Yeah.
month. Okay.
Yeah.
So you are on the records. If I find something, I can ask the bank to pay me loan.
That's right.
Give me loan, and the payout will be 1 month. Yeah.
Aren't you afraid you get failure and replace with cheaper like?
No, not at all. For one thing, I do architecture too, so. No, we still find internally a lot of bugs. We're definitely not just finding them through the bug map, through this. This is really just an addition. I think there's something.
Well, from the developers view, I would like to ask one thing like the Firefox Eco engine. Is it available for like an API or something in some other programming language environment?
The Firefox what?
The Eco engine.
Oh, the Gecko engine.
Yeah.
So it's an API. You could call it. You could build another UI over the top of it if you wanted.
Actually, it was available something like 2.0 or EcoFX 2.0 or something. But still, there is not any newer versions or something like that. Because it will be really grateful if we have something, the particular Eco engine is available for developers. We can do a bit more high-end process or something like that based on that. But the thing available is an older one. It's about 2.0.
Right. So Gecko changed dramatically with Firefox 4.0. Right. Like it changed the way that we think of the Gecko engine and how we access the Gecko engine. It all kind of centers around Zool. And when you figure like Firefox is really just a Zool shell over the top of Gecko. And the API thing kind of changed with that. I can talk to you more about that later. But
Still now we are able to use that, but with the current languages like .NET, like C# I know, there's a lot of problem when comparing.
I can believe it. I haven't tried that, so.
That would be very great.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay.
Claps. Thank you.